Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Sage Campus webinar. We're just going to give everyone a minute to join. We are a little bit early, so if you are joining us now, this is another Sage Campus webinar, this time focused on doing a digital humanities research project. So whilst we wait for people to join, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping. First, please feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A function, which you should be seeing at the bottom of your screen. We'll go into the Q&A at the end of the session. Also, today's session is being recorded, and we will send you the recording a couple of days after the webinar, along with some additional resources and the slides. So let me see if the numbers are steady. I think we might be able to start. So let's get started. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about doing a digital humanities research project. I am Pia, the Senior Marketing Manager for Sage Campus, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Basia Kapolka, who is the Digital Humanities Librarian at Northwestern University. Basia is also here because she has developed a fantastic new course for Sage Campus on Applied Digital Humanities, which launched in March as part of our new collection of courses. In case you don't know who we are, Sage Campus is a library resource created by Sage, offering a suite of online courses covering key skills and research methods across all stages of academic study. Our courses are developed by experts with fantastic instructors, such as our guest speaker today, and are self-paced to suit learners with busy schedules. I think we are ready to start, so I'll hand it over to Basia now, and I'll stop sharing my slides.
All right, thank you so much, Pia, and I want to thank everyone for joining today and taking the time to attend this webinar. And thank you, Sage, for inviting me. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. All right, so today we're talking about doing a digital humanities project, and I just wanted to start off by giving some background into who I am and what I do here at Northwestern. I'm in my third year in this role as digital humanities librarian, and I have a background in theater and philosophy, so I didn't come straight to the library path. I sort of started out in theater, and as I did more and more sort of dramaturgical work and research, I realized that research is really the thing that I love the most. And so I decided to go to library school and become a librarian. And I found that the intersection of sort of performance and storytelling with research was really um, prevalent in digital humanities, so I wanted to focus on that, and that is what brought me to where I am today. So I am learning too, just as much as everybody else, and I think that learning in academia never really stops. So I welcome your questions at the end, and please, if anything I say, um, if you disagree with it, I'd love to hear your thoughts and just a provisional, this is all exploratory, etc. Um, and then, so I want to hear from you all in the audience. I'd love to know what your current role is and what your typical function is on digital humanities project teams. So I think we have a poll, and you can go ahead and answer that if you would be so kind. That would be great. I'll give people a minute to start to get those answers in. And while I'm doing that, let me talk a little bit about why I'm asking these questions. So definitely digital humanities is a huge field, and we'll talk about that in a second. And it really, what you do with it really depends on what your role is on the project team, and whether you're sort of the lead researcher or you're more of a tech support. And I just want to make sure that I am, considering where you're coming from as I'm talking today.
Just a quick note. I think for the third question in the poll, which is meant to be a short answer, I can't really see the answer. So I don't know if this is something that we can only see after. So if you'd like to include that in the Q&A box instead, and then we can take a look at that once we've finished the poll, that's probably going to be the best way, I think. Unless, Basia, are you able to see them there?
I'm not seeing anything.
No. Okay.
So I'm not seeing any answers.
Okay, that's fine. I can share the information as I get it, if that helps you. So for the first question, what is your current role? The majority are faculty members, about 38%. Then next we have librarians at 30%, researchers 16%, and students 11%. And then for the second question, the majority are in the I create and run my own projects category. That's 49%. Then 37% I work on project teams. And then 25% I support projects as an advisor. And yeah, for the last question, I can't really see the answer. So yeah, we'll have to take a look at the Q&A, and I can see there's already a few answers there. So I'll end the poll now, and we can continue.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So wonderful that we have a good variety in our audience. And oh, now I can see the answers now that the
You
poll
can
is
see them
closed.
now. Okay,
um,
I'll stop sharing now.
that's great. And so what we're going to do today, I think should give you a sort of high level overview of what it takes to do a digital humanities project and maybe give you some helpful resources that you can use as you go forward and create your own projects and work on them. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is digital humanities. What is it and why do we do it? And then I'm going to share some of the projects that I myself have worked on as the digital humanities librarian. Then I'm going to go through some sort of the basic project steps for getting yourself up and running. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions at the end. So, what are the digital humanities? This is an eternal question, and there are as many answers as there are practitioners of digital humanities. And so we have books that are called Debates in the Digital Humanities and a website called What Are the Digital Humanities? Because it is such a big field, and I think it has only grown and encompassed more and more as the world has more moved toward being more digital. Digital is sort of in the air we breathe now, so we can't escape from it, which means that it's part of everything we study, and it is naturally being folded into all sorts of humanities research. um, Digital humanities, as I see it, taking a very broad view, is looking at the intersection of technology and the humanities. So I think of it as anytime you ask questions of technology using a humanities standpoint, or you use technology to study humanities texts, images, and other forms of documentation from the humanities. Um, it pulls its techniques from performance, from literary criticism, from history, from sociology, from art, from data analysis. So it's sort of this conglomeration of all kinds of different ways of thinking and studying, for lack of a better term, the human condition. um, and so it can take a number of different forms. Um, I think about it in a few different categories. So a lot of digital humanities research projects are research that is presented in digital forms. So, whether that be a digital exhibit or a website, a multimodal essay, things like that, it's enabled by digital methods and tools. And with that, we're talking about a lot of the text analysis that we use to study a a broad corpus that we don't necessarily have time to read cover to cover. It can help us map out um, um, geospatial data that can help us understand patterns in history. It also experiments with technologies. So, a big part of digital humanities work can be taking something very common that we're all used to using and like a website, say, or a TikTok or a podcast, and use it to ask these um, humanities questions and delve deeper into our whys of why we are in the world and how we are navigating it. Um, it can be about digital tech and culture. So I think that digital humanities is an important um, lens with which to look at how we are using technology and how it's affecting us in our day to day lives and affecting how we think. And then another important aspect is it is critical of its own digitalness. So we always in the humanities are reflecting and taking things with a grain of salt, and we always want to be asking, um, what is the digital experience adding? Is it adding anything to my understanding? Is this data, where did this data come from? Why is it, um, why might it be biased? Why might it be compelling? Um, and that sort of thing. So the next question, now that we've sort of answered what digital humanities is, the next question I want to talk about is why do we do digital humanities? Um, and I think that there are many, many reasons, and I'm sure you all have your own reasons for being interested in digital humanities. So I'm not, um, I, I couldn't put all of the reasons why I think digital humanities is good on one screen. So I'm just going to talk about a few key points, um, which is doing digital humanities is a way of reaching a wider audience. We talk sometimes about the public humanities in connection with the digital humanities, which is sort of reaching outside of the academy to pull people into these ideas and concepts that they might not encounter just through reading the newspaper and looking at social media. Some deeper stories and some interesting lenses with which to view the world. It can be a way of enhancing scholarship. So rather than reading an article about a music piece, you might encounter it in a digital project and have that music embedded in the project so that you can listen along and experience um, sort of that primary document as you're reading the criticism or the analysis of that document. Um, It allows us to tell different stories and to expand the notion of community. So again, reaching that wider audience beyond the academy and um, taking community into account, letting people tell their own stories, highlighting stories that maybe have been overlooked because we say history is written by the victors and it's also told by the people who are the loudest and have the most money. So um, digital humanities can help to enhance voices that have been muted in the past because it gathers more material. It allows us to look at more material through text analysis of the archives, for example, or it lets us tell stories in a small way where a website that doesn't have isn't necessarily going to become a book that thousands of people read. A website can be really influential for a small community and tell the history of that community. Um, so another thing, and these last three bullet points I have here are more about like what digital humanities does for students. That's a really important part of my work. I I assist classes and um, want to encourage all humanities students to learn these basic digital skills. I think that it engages people a little bit more than reading does all the time. Um, it encourages active engagement. So you're creating and you're deciding what to do with um, with the with the data that you're looking at, whether that's text or images, and instead of just reading about it and learn and like reading and thinking. So we're adding an active element to that. It also is really important for teaching collaboration skills, project management skills, and technical skills, which are going to be super useful when our students go into the job market. Um, I myself, like, because I was in theater, I had a lot of extra jobs and I was really good at Excel. That was one thing that I had going for me in my early career. And I could always get a temp job because I could do Excel. So I think about that and think about all these little skills that people don't necessarily value, but that could give them an edge or just make them a valuable candidate for jobs as they're looking for things. Um, and then the other thing that I think that is really critical and digital humanities helps us do is give students the confidence to be critical about technology. A lot of times we are aware of technology and we use it and we could use it really creatively, but we might not understand exactly how it works. And getting into these digital humanities projects, learning how to code, learning how natural language processing works, I think that allows people sort of a peek behind the hood or into the black box of technology and demystifies it in a way that's really important, especially for humanities students who might feel like, oh, I'm going to leave that to this, like my STEM colleagues or my computer science colleagues. And I just want people to know that um, it's possible to understand technology. Um, your critical thinking skills and everything that you have gathered so far in your humanities career are going to help you with thinking critically about technology, and we really need those voices as technology becomes more and more part of our lives. um, we need those voices to speak up and say, hey, what is this really doing, um, and why are we using it so much? Okay, I'm going to pause just to take a drink of water. And next I'm going to move into some project examples that I've worked on. And I want to preface this by saying I mostly work with students and faculty on digital exhibits and digital publishing. Um, I don't do a lot of text analysis because I have colleagues who are data scientists and they do more of the text analysis than I do. And I also have great colleagues who do the mapping and geospatial work. So what I've been called on to do is a lot of digital publishing and multimedia, multimodal essays. I think that faculty in the humanities at Northwestern really respond to and are excited about these kinds of projects. Um, partly because they're a great way to draw attention to interesting research that's going on and gain community support, and also because creating a website or a multimodal essay can be a really good end of term project for students that is a little bit different than the traditional essay. And I think it helps students think critically and think about what they're trying to say in a way that sort of frees them up from the 5 paragraph essay rut that a lot of students get into in high school, because that's the way they're taught to write, and you sort of lose sight of like, oh, I'm actually writing to communicate. And when you have somebody doing a website, it's sort of more immediate that there's an audience there. So students can really think about, oh, what am I actually trying to say and how do I want to say it? And how am I being like, what fun way, basically, can I communicate this message? It's a little bit more, it, it take, it takes the faculty sometimes out of the equation that you always want to please the faculty, but if you have a bigger audience in mind, it makes it a little bit more clear, that you have an independent voice and you can communicate something um, interesting and individual. Okay, so let's get started looking at these projects. Um, I didn't include a ton of slides um, for each project. I just wanted to give a basic idea of them, but I will include the links in the slides, which will be shared later, so you can explore these on your own if you want to take a sort of deeper look. Um, the first example I have here is a work in progress. So I'm working with 2 undergraduate students who are interested in tracking the travels of um, two artists who traveled a great deal in India and created art, watercolors, aqua tints of the regions where they traveled. So this is a project. They also have a faculty advisor in art history who's helping them with more of the scholarship. I am walking them through creating the site using WordPress and StoryMap.js. And we have a lot of conversations around how they can transform their disparate ideas into a cohesive story, and how to use maps alongside other web elements in a way that's complementary and conveys their message. They're sort of exploring a parallel story of the travels of these artists and the evolution of their art. So as they move from um, ink to watercolor, um, and eventually doing more prints and aqua tints. The next project I have to show, um, the next 2 are classroom projects. So these were end of term projects. And Northwestern is on the quarter system, so we have very short. They're 12-week quarters. It's an intense, hectic schedule for students. So I really um, I really appreciate when faculty bring me into the classroom early and I can have multiple meetings with their classes and with students to walk through the process so it's not a big scramble at the end. Um, in both of these cases, this first example, the Paris Expo, is something that we built with Scalar. And the second one that I'll show you is a WordPress site, another WordPress site. We use WordPress a lot because Northwestern has an instance of WordPress and it's free for students to create websites, and that um, they can create as many as they want. So it's very it's a very popular tool. Um, with this Scalar site, I created a framework site where each of the students could um, create their own project site, and then we'd link them all together. And we linked them together using this story map, which is what you see here. And I started off the class giving them a written tutorial of sort of how to get started, how to create their account, what sort of information to record about the images they were going to include. So all of that metadata. It's lovely to have metadata conversations with students when you're creating digital exhibits because it really sort of brings home like why would you need to capture this information and um, why make it available to your audience. And then did a workshop in class where we went through and sort of um, did the basic skills of creating the pages, doing formatting, adding your content, and linking everything together. And this is also a time when we have good conversations about responsible use and reuse of available content. So teaching students that they shouldn't just Google image search and use whatever images they find, that they need to make sure that their images they are licensed for reuse and that they attribute them correctly in their any materials that they're publicizing. Um, so this is the WordPress. This is actually a screenshot from a student's essay. So each of the students wrote an essay about a particular work. And this is a good example of this is connected to some physical work that they did in our archives and special collections. So they went in, found examples of pieces of art, and then used those to then create a digital essay and write about um, the 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 world around the art. The next example I have to show you is a small team project. This is called In America's Africa. It is a library initiated project that I was fortunate to be able to hire two graduate students to work on this with me. It's based on a collection that we have in our Herskovits library, which is our Africana collection. And the graduate students I hired, one of them was a computer science master's student, and one was a PhD in art history. And they taught me as much as I taught them because they had the art history student had curatorial experience, the computer scientist had development experience, and it was just a really enjoyable and fruitful project to work on. For this one, we used a static site generator called Canopy, which works particularly well with the digital collections, um, especially ones maintained by libraries and museums, which are tending to using a framework called IIIF, which integrates really well into these Canopy projects and allows you to not use a ton of your own server space and still have images that you can zoom in on really close and look at in great detail. It's similar to Collection Builder if you've ever used that. And one of the things that I found really interesting about this project was I basically served as the project manager. And my role, because I had these graduate students, and this was not their main focus, they were working 10 hours a week. So they needed me to sort of break the work up so that they could um, work on things and keep the project moving while not having it, eat up too much of their time. And I know I'm hoping that many people in the audience, like me, have the experience of like just rushing to get everything done at the last minute. And um, I am, as someone who's trying to break away from that habit, I found the project management aspect of this very useful because I had to think for other people, like, oh, how are we going to do this and not have to pull an all-nighter at the end. Um, and with this website as well, the students were able to gain experience using ArcGIS and GitHub and metadata best practices, and also think through user design and gain experience with collective decision making. The next project I have to show is a larger team project. This is again using Canopy. And it is a collaboration between faculty at Northwestern, members of the Northwestern Library team, and faculty at UIC. So this is a collection of Arabic manuscripts from West Africa, and the the scholars worked really hard on creating translations of these manuscripts and doing some annotations that you can see if you explore this site in more detail. And then there are essays that complement the manuscripts that talk about their history and significance. It's another example of using Canopy, but this time for a much larger project and a much larger team. And this also involved doing some customization of Canopy that the developers were able to do because the project team wanted to allow transcriptions of the manuscript to be included. And transcriptions are not included in the original digital collections at UIC and Northwestern. So where they are in the digital collections, this is enhancing their profile by just adding more information about it, and then hopefully spreading the word about what kind of collections we have and getting people intrigued and curious to visit the libraries. Okay. So I'm going to move in now to just talking about digital humanities projects. And this is a huge subject, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about each step along the way. I just sort of want to give you an overview of how I conceive of projects and how I talk through them, especially with people if I'm meeting people as a consultant in the library to help them get started with the project management. And I'm going to include some resources that you might find helpful. Um, and um, basically, because I'm a librarian, I'm always going to refer you to other places because I am a big believer in research. But let's talk about the most important things that you need to do a digital humanities project successfully. And that is whether you are building a digital exhibit like the ones I just showed you, or you're doing a text analysis project, you're analyzing the the circulation of a newspaper in the 1800s, any kind of digital humanities project you can think of. The two things that I think that you need are curiosity. And I know it's a little bit redundant to say this, and anybody who's attending a webinar um, is probably plenty curious. You know, you're eager to learn. But I think it's important to remember curiosity is the heart of all academic endeavor. But with digital humanities, there are so many possibilities and so many things to be curious about. You have the basic questions your project is trying to answer, but you also need to ask why your project matters, who it will impact, and why you're presenting your research in the way that you ultimately decide to present it. Um, I also want to offer a little reminder that digital humanities projects can be really fun. It's fun to learn new tools. It's fun to figure out new ways to present research. And we should embrace that playfulness and curiosity as digital humanities practitioners. The next essential tool is way more boring, but it's project management. Um, I had someone ask me sort of early on in my tenure here as the digital humanities librarian, like, what would you recommend people learn if they're wanting to do digital humanities? And I think the answer for me is project management, because you can know how to use any number of tools. You can be the best like user design website developer in the world. You can be a whiz at natural language processing. But if you don't have project management skills, you're not going to be able to take your ideas and the ideas of your team into something that exists in the world and can be communicated to other people. So you need the basic skills. You need to know how to make a timeline and hold people to the timeline, and also how to communicate between different people on your team. So um, you'll have scholars and researchers, and you'll have tech people on, and sometimes they don't always speak the same language. And as a project manager, um, that's one of your key roles, is to communicate between the members of the team to make sure everybody is sort of working on the same vision and communicating with each other about all the different aspects that go into creating a great digital humanities project. Okay, so let's talk about project steps. And again, I am leaving some out. I'm going to mention them, but they're not depicted on my slides. And I know that you all know that projects don't always go in the right order. You're always hopping around, you're looping back and forth, you're changing things in the middle. So this is a guideline for thinking things through, but know that it can change, and that is expected and fine and good. All research and all digital humanities projects are iterative by nature. Um, but starting with first things first, establishing a research question. Um, this is highly dependent on your field, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but I did want to mention two books that I found very helpful in especially talking to students about helping them develop their research question and what they're interested in, and like turning ideas into concrete lists of questions that can then be researched and found out, or you can develop ways of finding out the answers. So, Where Research Begins is one of them, and then Digital Paper is the other. They are both. I think Where Research Begins is super useful for turning a vague interest into a research question, and Digital Paper is more practical. It gives you steps for like um, what questions am I going to ask? Where am I going to ask them? And how am I going to keep track of my research as I'm doing it? Um, Next, identify your tools. Um, these are just a few of the tools that you might be interested, organized by the method that you might be interested in using. If you're new to digital humanities, these are good ones to get acquainted with. Um, and I'm going to share some links with additional resources that provide tutorials and things that so that you can learn how to use these and get started. Um, One thing that you want to consider when you're working on deciding on your tools is just asking the question, do I really need to use something huge and fancy, or could something simple work? Um, I think a lot of times I meet with students and they want to use natural language processing, but they have a small data set, and they could just as easily um, put that data into Excel and look at it manually and do some manual analyzing rather than devoting time to learning to code or setting up a complicated machine learning process. Next, assemble a team. So this is not necessarily a step for every project, because sometimes you are the team and you do all the work yourself. But you might want to consider whether you have all the skills that you need and whether you need to maybe enlist some help. So these are just a few of the people you might need on your team. A project manager, as I mentioned, very important, helping to keep things on task and freeing up the other members of the team to experiment and get creative and um, work independently on their pieces of the project. Um, a developer, especially if you are doing any public websites, it's very handy to have somebody who can create those for you designer to help you think through user experience and user interfaces. You might need a data scientist to help you process and analyze your data, depending on what you're doing. A subject expert, which is often, the faculty member or the scholar who's going to provide an expert eye to make sure that um, your research um, is up to the standard of the academic field that you're working in. Oh, I realize I have a typo, so I'm sorry about that. um, and then marketing, that's just it's always nice to have somebody who can do communications for you and enthusiastically promote your project once you're done with it. I just have a couple more steps to talk through. So, defining your scope and making a plan, a crucial part of project management. I'm including two links here that I have found very useful for documents. Um, One is from Emory and one is from Princeton. Then your research and analysis. I always encourage people think about your data and worry about your data. Even if you think you don't have any, you do. Every project is based on data. It could be text, it could be names and dates, but there is always data there. So I'm just including OpenRefine, which is a great tool for cleaning your data, and then GoFair, which is a good resource for um, to consult to make sure that your data is usable and meets all the standards of the field. Publication and feedback, and this actually isn't a typo. I couldn't decide whether to say feedback and publication or publication and feedback. And then I decided, oh, it's a loop. You have to put your ideas out in the world, get expert opinions, your peers' opinions, um, find out what their questions are, and then iterate and make your project better. And that just goes on and on, with the caveat that yes, there is a stopping point. um, and you get to decide when that is. But that doesn't mean um, that the ideas are finished. It just means that that's the stopping point for your project. Which brings me to reflection, and a big part of reflection is also preservation. So knowing how long you are going to save your data, where its ultimate home will be, whether you're going to archive your digital exhibit, so that if the tool is not usable in a couple years, you still have access to or can point to, oh, this is what the project looked like. And then reflecting on what went well, what you would change for next time. Um, just sort of tying everything up, I think is a really important part of the process, so that you can both sort of like celebrate your accomplishments, tie up the project, and then you're ready to move on to your next big project. And then, so these are just some additional resources. One of them is our research guide at Northwestern, which has a bunch of tools linked to it, and Awesome Digital Humanities is just a big list of everything you could possibly want related to digital humanities. And then I'm going to put in a plug for Programming Historian as a great spot for tutorials, especially if you're new to certain tools. That is all I have. So thank you so much for sticking with me, and I welcome any questions now. And if you have any questions later, you can feel free to email me as well.
Thank you so much, Basia. That was really, really helpful. I mean, there's a lot of information, and I'm sure we have quite a few questions already. So if they keep coming, we'll continue. We will be sharing, as I said earlier, the recording, the slides, and then links to various resources. So don't worry about that. I can see that a few of the questions in the chat are related to sort of specific resources that you would recommend. So we can follow up with everyone after the webinar. But I will start. So thank you also for sending questions as you were registering for this webinar. That really helped. And we have a few that we've selected from there. So first one is, and I don't think there's any surprise here, which is about AI. So how can I incorporate AI tools into digital humanities research?
Yeah, this is a really great question. And it's sort of tricky for me because it has two there are sort of two answers depending on what kind of research you're doing. I think that a lot of the work in text analysis is already fueled by artificial intelligence, things like natural language processing and named entity recognition and sentiment analysis. So those in that way, um, digital humanities is already using AI, and if you are using those tools, um, you can continue to do so, and they will, of course, be getting better and better. And as long as you are looking at your results with a critical eye, I think that is a great use of those tools. I think for myself as a practitioner of digital humanities, I use AI as a helpmate and as a tutor. So I think AI can be a really great way of learning how things work. I often ask it, I'll ask it how to help me like create a little bit of code so that I can automate a process like uploading um, videos to our video management software, or creating some styling code that I can use in a digital exhibit. And you can also ask it then to explain it to you, and that helps. I think it helps in the demystification process. Um, it lets you learn sort of immediately and in a natural way how things are working. And it can also give you ideas. It can help you with scheduling or organizing your notes. I think definitely use AI as a competent assistant, but just don't give it the fun parts. Anything that you really love to do, just you keep doing that yourself.
I think that's really good advice. um, the second question I had was how to use digital humanities to analyze, report on, and even evaluate program survey responses that are narrative written.
So this is actually this is something that we take from sociology. Um, you want to learn about the qualitative methods that they use in sociology. I'm not really well versed in this because we have a very good sociology scholar on our team who works on qualitative methods. But I know that Sage has some courses on it, and just sort of looking up tutorials or like beginning qualitative methods is a great way to learn how to you'll take those survey responses and code them and turn them into something that you can use a machine to interpret.
You for that? Sorry. There were quite a few questions, I think, that I saw earlier on sort of how to get digital humanities started on campus. I think a lot of people are saying they've either trying to start it or they have been tasked with it, and what to do if you're kind of an accidental digital humanities librarian and you know nothing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think that you can't go wrong with starting if you're just trying to get a handle on where digital humanities is and like what the state of it is. The debates in the digital humanities collection of books is very useful. I think the last one was published in 2019. um, Also looking at digital humanities journals, I have a bunch of them listed in my research guide on digital humanities, so you can start with those. I think starting with a few small projects as somebody who's trying to get digital humanities started on campus is a good way to sort of build interest. And it's really great to have a product or something that you can show people and say, oh, this is what we did. And then they can be inspired by it and say, oh, I want to do something like that. Um, and then as you're doing these projects, you're gradually going to increase your familiarity with these tools. And you can host workshops on campus, or contact faculty and try to get um, um, sell them on the idea of having a digital humanities project as the final project. It's fun for students, and it can be a good break for teachers from grading essays. um, and then also I would look at available syllabuses for digital humanities courses. When I was first learning about digital humanities, I relied on Miriam Posner a lot, who has a lot of resources on her website. And Ted Underwood is another one who has a lot of public syllabuses that you could look at to sort of get an overview.
And I think related to the question that you just answered, there's a question that just came up saying, it seems like most libraries who do digital humanities projects have a very rich special collections that they draw from. What if a library's special collections are limited? Where else do you find digital collections to base a project on?
Well, I think one of the great things about the age we're living in now is that since libraries have digital collections and museums have digital collections, you don't necessarily need to use the ones at your institution. You can use items that you're finding from all over the world. And things like Triple IF are making that even easier. There are a number of viewers. Mirador is one of them that let you sort of place images side by side. So even if you're not the owning institution, you can compare images and sort of bring a collection together by virtue of the theme or the connection that you find between them. So the scholarship, it doesn't depend on ownership, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And can you be a digital humanities librarian without any knowledge of coding or, for that matter, text and data mining? For instance, if someone has an interest in critical social theories, then will she be a suitable one for digital humanities?
I think so. I'm going to say yes because I don't know a lot about coding. I am learning, and I think it is important to to be open to learning how to code. But I have a lot of support from developers on our team, so that you don't necessarily need to know everything. And there are a lot of sort of um, out of the box tools that you can use, and there are more and more of them are being developed every day. So I don't think um, that you need to know how to code.
Um, there's a question here about um, so one of the things you mentioned in your presentation was the sort of project management side of it, and someone was asking if you use any sort of particular software or you recommend any for sort of project management specifically.
Yeah, this is a question that I have not answered for myself yet, unfortunately. I have played around with Trello and uh, I'm sorry, I'm just blanking on the name all of a sudden. Smart Sheets is another one that I've used, but I really go back to documents and Excel spreadsheets because that's what I'm the most familiar with, and that's what feels the most comfortable for me to use. I think for the most part, I've managed pretty small teams. So if you were managing like a 20 or 30 person team, you probably would want a project management software, but I haven't delved into those yet. I think whatever makes the most sense for your brain is is the thing that you're going to stick to, and that's going to be the most helpful for you.
Yeah, if anyone on the call has any recommendations, please feel free to add them to the Q&A. It's always great to hear what people are using and what has worked for them. Someone was asking about in terms of uh, sort of is working in digital humanities typically a freelance position or is it usually affiliated with a university?
I think it depends. you are seeing fewer digital humanities librarian positions nowadays, but I think it is getting lumped in, or that I don't mean lumped in a negative way, but like it's getting combined with digital publishing, which is another big area that libraries are into, and open access publishing, because that way, we can provide free resources in a world where like educational publishing is super expensive. Um, and there are also digital humanities professors. So, and I know that there are schools that have programs dedicated to digital humanities. Um, I think, I guess the variety of things that digital humanities involves, like you could hire a freelance web developer to work on a digital humanities project, and so in that way you might be involved in digital humanities as a freelancer. Um, it's also just, it's a skill set that kind of underlies a lot of jobs that are in demand right now um, in in libraries, in schools, and in sort of the publishing world.
Um, There's a question here. Someone says, I used to teach literature classes for undergraduates, and students seem to find these classes boring. How can we incorporate digital humanities in literature classes to make them more interesting for students?
Wow, that's a good question. Um, I don't know what students find boring about literature classes. I guess I would encourage using maybe annotated editions or interactive stories as a way of pulling in um, digital tools that can help um, make the dense text world more alive. Certainly. I want to say we had a class recently that was studying a certain period in French history, and they had their students use. I'm blanking on the name of the game. It's a very popular game that has a has a lot of iterations, but one of them is set in France in this particular period of time. So they had their students play the intro to this game, which like walks you through the streets of Paris in the like early 1800s, and that is a great way, I think, of immersing students in a world and sort of giving them a way of imagining and getting into the setting that is not, sometimes you reading needs to be enhanced by a little extra input, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah, I think you might be thinking of, it might be Assassin's Creed, maybe
yeah,
the game.
that's
Yeah,
what it was. Yeah.
it is good for that. I think we only have time for one more question. Someone here has asked about using, do you use or establish contract agreements when working with students, faculty, others?
Yeah, that's something I didn't mention, but I think that is very important. We have a sort of standard agreement when we're working on a project that is a long term and that we are supporting. So if we're using the library servers, or we're in some way responsible for making sure that the website is functioning properly. And what we include in that is sort of the basic agreement about what support the library is going to offer, what responsibilities we're expecting of the faculty or student who is taking the lead on the project, and then how long we will um, maintain the site and what will happen once it's gone. So for sites that we don't support any longer, um, we keep a record of them, and we keep sort of um, screenshots and all the information and data that was maintained by the website in our institutional repository for long-term storage.
Thank you for that. I think we'll have to end the Q&A here. I saw that a lot of the questions are regarding sort of specific examples and links to resources. So yes, we'll follow up with the recording, and we'll include links to different types of projects and some of the ones that Basia has included in her slides, and then other sort of tools that you might be able to check out. So look out for an email from us in the next couple of days. But I think we have to end it here now. Thank you so much, Basia, for your time and for sharing your experience. And thanks everyone who has attended. And I hope you have found this webinar useful and learned lots of new things. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.
Right. Thank you so much.